Our next slot is a round table with topic woman in FLOSS technology, and I leave leading of this to my colleague Jasna.
Thank you. We have a moderator, Lucia Pilić, who will actually present the entire roundtable.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for joining our roundtable, Women in FLOSS Technology World. As the name suggests, we're going to address the topic of minority of women in FLOSS Technology World. What could be, we're going to suggest some solutions to that problem. We're going to inform how women can join FLOSS project and community, and how can they contribute to those projects. And we're going to share the experiences. The panelists are going to share the experiences. So I would like panelists to, briefly share a couple of words about themselves.
Hello, my name is Mandić. I'm working as a Java developer for more than 10 years, but I'm also an active member of Croatian Girl Geek Dinners community, where we are trying to organize some workshops and present all the options for ladies in IT, how to work, where to find information, and how to promote what they are doing.
Hello. Hello, my name is Marta, and I'm a student of last year of the University of Computer Engineering here in Zagreb at the Faculty of Electronic and Computer Engineering. The reason I've been invited to this talk or round table is because recently I joined Google Summer of Code, so I'm contributing to open source now and finally doing something really fun, and I'm really excited to share this information with you. So in the next round, or in the next round of questions, I'm going to introduce you much more about Google Summer of Code and the opportunities that students have at this point.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth K. Joseph. I currently work at HP. In my role there, I'm working directly on the OpenStack project, which is an open source project. In my free time, I also do a lot of open source, which sort of led into my role at HP. I'm a member of the Ubuntu Community Council, and I'm one of the co-authors of the official Ubuntu book coming out next month.
Hi everyone, my name is Jasna. By profession, I'm a teacher of informatics, but I ended up working in industry as a junior operations engineer for an American-based company, TeamSnap. In volunteering level of free and open source technology world, I help where I can, and currently I'm helping mostly in my Croatian Linux Users Association, where I hold the vice president position, and that gives me a full right to bother my friends to bring Linux torvalds here one day.
So for starters, ladies, can you tell us a bit how you started in the FLOSS technology world? What was the first project you worked on?
Well, I decided that I want to be a developer in high school, then during my university, and what actually I try to do is to find some projects where I can contribute to the society, because right now I'm working on, in my company I'm working on some projects that are not open to the society, and I want to contribute somehow to the society, because I think that we all have the duty to make this world better. We cannot just say, oh, this world is not okay, I want things to change. So I decided to start one project that will help less fortunate people. And we organized hackathon last year that was called Cipele 46. That's a project that where we gathered people from different technologies to help us build something and to show that we all can participate and make this community a better world.
So you know when someone, you have a feeling that someone put you a bug into your ear or your head. So I have a feeling that my dad, when he showed me his first computer that he built, it's called Galaxy in the 80s, that this was my bug, and I started to be interested in computers and mostly in electronics. I didn't have much choice, so I was going to the high school where not so much computing was done, but later on I decided that my way is computing, and I wanted to be a developer, so I moved here to Zagreb and started studying at the university. I was researching a lot and finding my way, what to do and how to have fun with the stuff, because I didn't like just to study at the university. That was kind of boring. So that's how I discovered Linux and all the distributions. So I wanted to learn much more about it, and I was discovering different things, and at that point I was using many different user interfaces, and I found GNOME like a really, really nice user interface. Like it's giving you some sense of friendliness, and I started thinking, well, but something is missing there. I could maybe build something or make some fun widgets or something. So I started looking into extensions and stuff like that. So at that point, I started already looking a little bit at the code. I didn't contribute much more because I had the university and all this stuff. So, but at this point, I discovered Google Summer of Code, and I saw that GNOME Foundation is also there. So I actually have done some work for them and contributed while working on some bugs, because that was how you could join Google Summer of Code, and of course by writing a proposal, and that's how you could be selected for Google Summer of Code. This first year that I decided to join, I didn't succeed because I started a little bit, let's say, too late, and I couldn't work too much on it. So, well, I said, okay, I have 1 year, and I guess I will do much more, and I will get to know code and be deeper inside. And because GNOME is really a huge project, and it's difficult to choose one part of it which you want to work on. So next year, actually this is the year, I tried again, and I started contributing at the right time, and I chose the project that I'm most interested in. So at that point, I succeeded, and I got into Google Summer of Code. I also heard about the project OPV, or
Outreach
program for women, which I also applied for, but I got Google Summer of Code. These are the similar projects, just outreach program for women is accepting only women, and not only students, but all kinds of grown-ups and women that are into IT and open source. Actually, some kind of documentation can be also done there, so it's not only for developers. This is really fun. I'm doing what I really like, and I'm contributing to GNOME, to open source, and I'm proud to say that, because everyone can use GNOME, everyone can install it right now and try it, and you should see it. It's really nice user interface, and it's good to say this, because when you want to install some non-free software or something, it's non-free, you know, and of course you can choose the way to download it and not pay it, but that's not the right way to go. So I think everyone, you know, should try once in a while to download this free software and try and look at it, see it. It's really fun. So right now I'm working for Google Summer of Code. This is a project that's 3 months long, and Google is sponsoring some organizations, open source software, and paying the students to work for them. This opportunity was a huge thing, because actually I'm talking to the whole world. I have to blog about my work, and I can see that the whole world is looking into my blog and saying and giving me feedback about the application that I'm building and working on. So I hope I will, after Google Summer of Code, that I will stay in GNOME Foundation and that I will continue working with them and contribute much more. So that's my story about the start and the moment now.
So I got started a long time ago. I was sort of sitting in an IRC channel for one of the projects that I used, and the lead developer says, I need to write documentation, but I don't want to write documentation. Can anyone write documentation? I was like, sure, how hard can that be? So, first lesson, writing documentation is not simple. Also, using DocBook is not simple, so I learned a lot really fast. So first it was just contributing documentation. I'm a systems administrator by trade, so I'm a really bad programmer. So I haven't spent much time contributing code to projects. So what I typically worked on was sort of community side stuff. So I help enable teams to get their work done. I've worked on websites. I've hosted servers that teams use. And other things sort of related to the whole development process. And that's sort of led into the work I do now at HP, which is supporting the development infrastructure for the OpenStack project. I've also done a little bit of Debian development, packaging software at my former job that we used on our own servers, and then contributing that to upstream in Debian. So I've sort of been all over the map contribution-wise, except not a whole lot of programming. So for people who aren't programmers in the room, there are definitely a lot of opportunities in open source that are not strictly just writing code, just because the projects need a lot more than just the code out there.
My story with Linux started at college, similar like Marta. When I had to write a bachelor thesis, I didn't know what to write, and one of the professors actually offered Ubuntu operating systems, and that's how I started to roll with this free and open source technology. Everything after that actually happened spontaneously because I was upgrading my knowledge, and I joined local Linux groups, and I started volunteering at Croatian Linux Users Association in 2010. In 2012, I got the vice president position, and that actually gave me a nice wind on my back to contribute more. And I even got that if I didn't join them, I wouldn't be able to organize this conference with my friends here. I hope you have a good time for now. And I'm not only contributing to free and open source communities here in Croatia, but in abroad as well. I joined, firstly I started to work with Maktware and writing articles with them about free and open source technology, and then I found Elizabeth, and she needed help with the Ubuntu Weekly newsletter, and she really accepted me like nobody else, and this was my starting point to actually start working with other teams abroad, and that's pretty much it. And that actually enabled me to even get an international career, because I work for an American-based company. I work from home. My hobby actually turned into a job, so I could relate to Greg Crow-Hartman's sentence when he said, first off, it was my hobby, now I don't have a hobby. So that's briefly my story.
So how did you adapt to this new environment? Did you encounter any challenges, technical, non-technical challenges, and how you dealt with them?
Should I start?
Yes, you can start.
Okay, challenges, there are a lot of challenges in this free and open source technology world on the volunteering level. I would actually extract one with which you will all encounter when you join, if you haven't volunteered before. I would call it that volunteers are like snowflakes. They show up and they disappear. And that can be really frustrating, because when you're working on a project and people tell you, yeah, I'm going to help you, I'm so excited about this project, and then when work has to be done, people disappear. And then, wait a minute, you have promised me that we will work together, why did you disappear? And later I was like, in the beginning I was really stumped with that, and it frustrated me. But later on, I started to learn that maybe I shouldn't have such a big expectations. I mean, this is volunteering world after all, and I can't treat people like they're my employees because I don't pay them, right? So I should actually be thankful for every little step, every little contribution that I get from others. And that's what I would actually extrude as a big challenge with which I have encountered on the beginning, and I'm still encountering that issue. I mean,
Elizabeth?
Sure. So finding the first place to get involved tends to be where a lot of people get stuck. Some open source websites have really giant get involved links that are very effective. Some have them and they're just a list of projects you can get involved with, and that's not quite as effective. And some projects don't have them at all. They have a source repository up on a website, and that's all they have. So one of the things I try to do when I first join a project, if I'm not there to fix something specifically, I typically join their mailing list or their IRC channel and other places where stuff is going on, and I sort of just watch of what's going on in the community. And things sort of fall out contribution-wise. Like when I was in that first project channel I was in, and they said, hey, we need docs. That wasn't something they announced on the mailing list. That was something that was casually mentioned in the chat channel. And that's sort of that, and I just grabbed onto that, and I was like, I'll do that. So I think most of my work in open source has been sort of finding where there are deficiencies in the community and then trying to fill those with things that I could do to help. And I find that to be a really effective way of contributing. Because I found even if you search through bug reports and do other things, it can be really hard to get to the bottom of a bug and fix it as your first contribution. Because the easy bugs have already been fixed in a lot of cases. So finding your first project is definitely one of the things that I find hardest. And then once you do your first project, you're sort of in the group now, and you can more easily identify things from there. So I'd recommend don't give up if you haven't contributed to open source and you found it hard to get involved. It definitely can be pretty hard. And you can always ask for help from existing project members. Some of them are nicer than others, but asking for help on how to contribute to something, if somebody may invest their time in you and they can help you from there.
I can say that I'm pretty young in this, the whole world of open source and the stuff, but I would agree with Elizabeth that at the beginning it's difficult to find something you want to work on. Of course, that step wasn't so difficult for me because I knew I want to contribute to GNOME Foundation, but then what should I contribute to? What project? There is a broad resource of projects and stuff that you can do there. So I somehow look into the projects that they have, and I found some interesting stuff that I would like to look into, and then showed up the Google Summer of Code. Then I more and more I was into some projects, and I started looking into the code, and then I had to find a bug to fix because that was the way you could start, the way you can actually apply for the Google Summer of Code for the GNOME Foundation, and yeah, I found some bugs, but those were not really easy because Elizabeth said the easiest one were already fixed. But then I found a mentor, which was a very helpful guy, and he kind of guided me into all this stuff. But as the GNOME Foundation is so huge, and the documentation is also big, but it's difficult to find the information you are looking for, and they don't really have a big resource of information. If you want to look into code, there is no comments or anything. So at the beginning, this was really difficult. But when I started, also because there is a new language for me that they're using, and when I started getting used to it, I said, okay, I understand now why don't they comment the code and everything, because the code is already self-commented, so they don't really need it. But it actually takes some time to get used to it. So this was one of my biggest challenges, and actually I'm still approaching this challenge because everything is new, and every step you take is something new. Because right now I'm building a whole new application which is doing nothing similar as any other application in the GNOME. So every time, for example, I need to do something, to decide about something, there is 5 or 6 ways you could choose to go, and the only one I could talk to is my mentor. And this is actually why we are sitting here in the round table, because we want to discuss about how people are involved in open source. And I can say that this is the first time I am sharing some information with the girls, because earlier I couldn't talk with them about this. I didn't find many girls at university that were interested in that, because mostly I found at university 2 kinds of people: the ones that just want to finish university, and the other ones that are very interested in the stuff they're doing. And those people are also doing some other projects, and they're very busy. So it's somehow difficult to find, the people that you could talk and share the information with. So I'm finding really exciting this opportunity that I'm joining the round table and sharing the information, and hopefully I will do much more with these girls now and then while I started.
So I could only repeat what they said, because I noticed that here in Croatia we have 2 main problems. One is finding volunteers and keeping working on the project. And the other one is lack of mentors, because even if people decide to do something, then where do we find mentors? How do we encourage young people to join and to work on some initiative? And it is not only a problem for girls, but we do want to encourage more young people to work. So we need mentors for both girls and boys, and we need to show them examples how to do it, and that they can openly go and talk to the people. So during my life, my university and my professional life, I haven't seen a girl developer that worked with me and that was my mentor, because I always worked with the guys. And now we do have few employees in my company, and I'm trying to work with them, but I haven't found a mentor so far. So that can be challenging.
Yeah, and one thing I also found like a challenge was at the university. Many courses, or our university is not really built in a way that is encouraging you to use open source, because many courses are using non-free technologies, and somehow you need to have those installed if you want to pass the course, or if you want to do. Of course, I'm really glad for the ones that are giving you the chance, but I can say that it's different, because I was studying for 1 semester at the university in Denmark, and the whole structure of the university, all the servers and everything is pointed to open source, and they are really encouraging the students to use open source. So at the point when I could leave non-free software was a releasing point to me, because I could just use what I want then. I could choose what I want, not what they are giving me to use and what they are saying you should use this technology and this technology. So I could say at the 4th year of the university I could really do that and use what I really like to use.
So can you share some info about programs that that encourage women specifically to join to the FLOSS community, and can you share some experience from them?
What we are working in Croatia, we are trying to organize some workshops that are like Rails girls, Pi ladies, Android girls. That way we are showing ladies that it's kind of easy to start developing, because today's workshop is organized in a way that they can come here, install everything they need on their computers and produce something that will work in 2 days. It's not a complicated task, but the important thing is that they can develop something and have something running in 2 days. That could be this should be enough to encourage them to start working. No one can learn anything in 2 days. It's too small time, but it will give them an example of how and where to start, to connect with the community and to continue working. And maybe we can share and expand this community and engage more people in those kinds of workshops. Also, we would also like to start those kind of workshops in high schools and show kids that it is cool to be a developer or to work in IT and to choose that kind of career.
What major obstacles did you find when you started the initiative in high schools and elementary schools?
Main obstacle is that when we contact teachers in high schools or elementary schools is that they don't have time. They already have schedule organized, they have their program done, and it's kind of difficult to find one day in a week so we could come and present and show them what we do, how we do it, and that's nice to be in IT. So kind of people are passive and they have their schedule, they stick to it, and any change in a program is problematic.
And what about PyLadies, Android learning? Why isn't there more workshops? Because of the same problem, or?
Interesting thing is that I have found a great support in my company and from my colleagues and from other companies, and we do have volunteers to organize workshops, but then we don't have money. So we are looking for sponsors, because every workshop is 2 days. We need some materials. We need to give them the ladies materials. We need to organize food and drinks. So that costs. We don't have support from the ministry or from the state. So we need to get sponsors from companies that are interested into promoting that. I'm very glad to say that I can say that colleagues are helping and they want to give us support to organize more workshops. So I hope we will have them more.
You said that you attended the Grace Hopper conference, and it was because you organized this Croatia Girl Geek Dinners event.
Yes, Grace Hopper and Google sent 30 girls from EMEA to US for a conference, and they chose us based on our projects that girls were from all over the Europe and Africa, and every girl had a project that they worked on in their country in promoting IT for kids, girls in their communities. So because I worked on Android Girls Workshop, they recognized as an interesting project, and they sent me to Grace Hopper conference.
And how was it like? Did it?
It was interesting. It was like 5,000 ladies in a conference, something that you cannot see here. And usually when you go to the conference, my last conference, there was like 20 girls and 200 boys. And in this conference, it was full of ladies, and there was a line in front of the ladies' restroom, so one main restroom was taken over. So it was interesting. And it's funny, and it was like 4 or 5 days, and the lectures were technical. We had some technical lectures from ladies from Facebook, from Google. There were also some lectures how to work and present as a lady in IT, because it's men's world. And also there were programs how to start mentorships and how to promote IT for young people.
And was the atmosphere much, different than usual IT conferences where girls and women are like 10% of?
Yes, it was very positive. It was very positive because I have some not nice experience from conference in Croatia when I come to the conference and then I have to look at the young, poorly dressed ladies that as hosts or as in the evening on the party. So not something that I would like to experience again.
Thank you. Elizabeth, can you tell us more about Outreach for Women project and other programs? Or Marta, you also can.
Outreach program for women. Before that, do you have a question in the public?
Yes, I have a question because for the past few weeks I was speaking with girls from Google and some other companies, and we see a problem with girls in IT that most girls lack the passion, like most of you here, the passion to join a project, to continue evolving their skills. And the second problem that we see is that first, when a girl starts its first IT job, the problem is that if she's disappointed or she gets sacked because of something, they are so disappointed that they leave the IT as a whole. And can you comment on this, on both of these things?
I think you can comment because you said you failed on your first internship and then you just went on to apply for another.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me well? Yeah. I can comment that, but I actually, this is strange that I joined this roundtable because I really dislike talking about men and world and things like that. I always, when someone asks me, as you as a woman and this, and I said, but what is the difference? There is not much difference, of course. But yeah, as you can say, I think girls are much more emotional, and yeah, they can take it this way that I'm not good enough, or I didn't succeed the first time, so I'm probably bad in that, or something like that. So actually, we're not just talking about girls. We're talking about the people. Sometimes some other men can also say that. Sometimes, I don't know. So it's about a person that you want to evolve and you want to learn, and I don't know, you want to try again. If you fail once, it doesn't mean, maybe you have to find a reason why you failed, and not just say, I failed because I'm a woman, or I failed because I'm not good enough. Okay, you failed if you're not good enough, but you can become better, right? You want to do it, so then study, learn it, right?
My question more likely is how you can influence women that they will have your passion, that they will continue even if they stumble the first time or the second time or the third time.
Jasna can answer that, I think. Yes.
But I would like to say that this is not only, this is the society problem, because if a woman fails, and it happened to me, I made a bad project and I had a problem with that, and then my colleagues on university came to me and said, you're a woman, you will never be a developer, please go do something else. So we need to encourage women and men to support. If someone failed and wants to try again, we should not stop them. We should help them, because if they are stubborn enough to try again, then they should do it. And yes, I think that there is a greater rate of ladies that drop off, because somehow our society is kind of telling them to drop off and not supporting enough.
Also, on the topic of passion for technology, one of the things I encountered when I was in high school, I was always dabbling with computers, and I spent the money I got from my summer job on buying more computers, and I loved computers. But when I went to my first programming class in high school, which was when I was about 15 or so, all the examples in the book were they were all about how to calculate things with programs using sports, and I didn't really care for sports. It wasn't really my thing. If I had been introduced to programming and computers, and we were using something like Populous, that would have really engaged me and had me interested, because that matters, and to me sports don't matter. So I think part of it is engaging people in engaging your students and people who are younger into interesting projects and things that have a broader range of interest. So for me, open source has mostly been about helping the world and making the world a better place. And contributing, that's where my passion comes from. And I happen to like technology, and that's how I figure we can do it best. So I think, you know, approaching people with things that are already interested in, you know, don't always use sports or construction or, you know, things that are typically male-dominated fields to introduce people to technology would help a lot. There's a company in the US called Goldie Blocks, and they create these toys for girls now that are like big construction sets where they have like, they're pink and they have princesses and they're great, but they're actually like Supergirl Legos, and they're awesome, and you can build all these really amazing, cool things. So they're getting girls interested in technology and engineering by picking on just stereotypically and traditionally female spaces and trying to attract them into that. So then hopefully when they're older, then finally they'll be like, yes, I love technology, and they're just coming at it from a different space.
Okay, considering women quitting and it's too difficult, or I'm not too good for this, my teaching profession has to speak now. People who are teaching, they should actually really consider to give really, really simple examples at the start, and they should actually later start with more difficult stuff, because if you give them a difficult task in the beginning, of course they will quit. Of course they won't see the end, they won't see the goal, they will see just, oh, this is such a big mountain, I will never finish this. I can't do this. And if you give them just one little piece, one little line, that's a start. That's a start to give them that motivation. And of course, a lot of feedback, a lot of acknowledgement, and that should actually happen in, this free and open source technology world while other people are contributing, not only women, but men also, because if you don't give them acknowledgement enough, if you don't tell them thank you enough, you will see that they disappear. And that's what I said in the beginning. They're like snowflakes. They show up and they disappear. And it's like you would run an open source course, not an open source course, online course. If a mentor is not present enough, and if he's not a facilitator, and if he doesn't give it enough feedback, that person will actually start losing motivation. And that happens here in free and open source technology world as well. We should give definitely more feedback, definitely more acknowledgement, because a lot of this actually happens online. And not giving up. Please start with simple things. And you are working at, as I know, you are working at university, right? Yeah, so you know how it goes. I don't have to teach you that.
So Jasna, can you say that it is a problem of education system in general? So in Croatia, when you get an F, you probably won't be able to correct that F. You know, you will be stuck with it, and if you have all the other grades A, you will get B at the finish, you know. And isn't that a problem that we encourage people to fail more than to succeed, you know? That this is the kind of, you know, like filtration system for the best. You can have a bad day, you can make a mistake. And what would be your comment on it?
Well, I would comment on this, that in education systems, some teachers have a wrong approach, or you can actually relate that to students as well, because they only learn for a grade. They don't learn for themselves. That's the problem actually here. I would really much relate that to more to students, and maybe even to system, because they push them. They should actually achieve that goal just for a grade, and not for passion that has to be developed. And we are all here because of this passion. We all love this free and open source technology, and you wouldn't be here if you don't like that, right? So to develop that passion, we should actually teach students in all level of education to find that inner motivation. If you're gonna motivate them with grades, that's not going to last for a long time. That's not going to bring them into this field we are all in, and that's not going to push them forward to research and find their niche.
Okay, thank you. So let's get back to the main topic, and that are programs for women. So we mentioned Grace Hopper Conference. Are there any other programs for women to join, and how?
So I'm involved with a few programs. I did a technical workshop last fall on OpenStack for a program called Code Chicks. Currently, I think they're just in the US, but they've been expanding, and they do a lot of workshops that have male and female attendees, but typically the instructor is female, and it's really geared towards getting women involved. But my workshop on OpenStack was about half and half gender-wise. And they also have sort of like hack workshops where they're women only, and you can ask all kinds of questions that you might be afraid to ask in front of people if you're embarrassed. So they have like one-on-one mentorship there where you can just ask your question and work with other women in the field. Because as some people have said here already on this panel, there aren't a lot of women in technology, so when you finally find one, it's like, yay, I get to work with a woman now. That's exciting and different and new. And I also work on the Ubuntu Women project. A lot of open source, not a lot, but several of the larger open source projects have groups for women inside them now. Typically, the aim of the group is to encourage women to use and participate in the organization. So for Ubuntu Women, we don't really have a formal mentorship program, but typically we'll sort of take someone under our wing if they drop by our IRC channel or post on the mailing list about what they're interested in. We might say, well, you know, if you're interested in this, you may check out this project, and then sort of help them along trying to find where they can contribute in the project. So we're trying to help make the process of onboarding into a project a lot easier. And so I know there's Fedora Women and the GNOME Outreach Program for Women sort of sprung out of this idea as well. And I can talk to about that quickly, the outreach program for women.
Yes.
That's an internship that's open to anyone in the world, and it's hosted, I think, 2 or 3 times a year, so it's not only during the Northern Hemisphere summer, which is helpful because the Google Summer of Code, I think, is still just during the Northern Hemisphere summer, so people in Australia and South America and Sub-Saharan Africa have trouble participating because that's not when their summer is. It also doesn't only accept students, it accepts any women who are wishing to apply, and they will get an internship stipend, which I think is $5,000 US. And so there are lots of success stories from this, but one that I'm personally familiar with is a woman that I work with now. She's a bit older than me, and she was interested in technology, but wasn't really sure where to start, so she joined the program. Started working on OpenStack with us and joined the team that I'm on for infrastructure. And this was last spring. I think she was taking the outreach program, and we hired her at HP in August. So now she's like my colleague who I get to travel the world with, and that's all sort of grown up out of this outreach program. She got a job out of it, which was her intent in the end. And it was really fascinating to see. Plus now I have another female colleague, so I think the program's really effective, and it's a great one. It's also, there have been statistics that show that since the GNOME Outreach Program for Women has come in, the number of female participants in Google Summer of Code has increased as well, because a lot of women will start with the one internship program and then they'll move into Summer of Code because they're now more comfortable and they can have a more impressive application for the Summer of Code. So it's really awesome that you got into the Summer of Code without doing the outreach program for women, because I think also it's having women see more women participating makes more women apply. So.
Yes, Marta. Can you join your experience with Google Outreach for with Google Summer of Code, in the sense that you said that you have mostly male mentors? Yeah.
Male.
Yes.
Yeah.
How does it work? I mean, what are you doing currently? And
I was really glad first when I joined IRC channel, Women, and then Marina came to me, hey, hello, how are you? And she really introduced me a little bit into this outreach program for women, because I didn't know about it. First I heard about Google Summer of Code, and then I heard about this. And the second year I applied, I also applied for outreach program from women, because I was a little bit scared that I want get into the Google Summer of Code again, so I just didn't want to miss a chance again. Yeah, most or all the mentors I worked with are male, but I don't find it as a problem. They're really open to communication. They're giving me feedback. Now during the Summer of Code, we agreed to have a meeting once a week, just to inform him what I'm doing and how is it going. And he is always open to questions, and he said that he would like to help me whenever I need it. So it's fine with that.
So Elizabeth, working with women as opposed to working in a normal IT environment, how is it like? Is it really different? Like Anna mentioned that it's different. It was different for her on Grace Copper conference. Is it different like when you're working with someone who is female?
Yeah, it's not really something that's quantifiable. It's there's something about showing up in a room where no one looks like you that's very alienating, and it's hard to describe really. I mean, I've sort of gotten used to it because I've been doing open source for over 10 years now, and I've worked in IT for a long time. So I've gotten used to that. So when I'm in a room with a lot of women or like doing something like a female space conference, you all of a sudden feel this comfort that you never felt before because everyone around you looks like you and is very similar to you. So it feels very comfortable, and it's not that the women are better or that I prefer to work with women. I like working with people. I don't care anything about you, but when I find myself surrounded by people who are like me, it's just a like totally new comfort thing that comes around, and it's.
Is it more safe?
It feels safe. It does feel a bit more safe, and also I think this goes for any minority who finds themselves as a minority in an organization. The people around you, it seems like they can understand you more, especially if you're broadly a minority. Like in almost every area, women are a minority in tech. So we'll all have stories about things that have happened to us, or we'll understand what it means to be representing your entire gender in a role at a job. Like if you fail, that means all women in tech fail. So like, oh, I worked with a woman once, it was terrible. Like, that's horrible for us. But we all have these stories that we can tell each other, and it's finally comforting to be able to talk about them. Because the men that I work with every day don't encounter this sort of thing. So that's another part of sort of how it's comfortable.
So how did participating in the FLOSS world help you on professional and personal level? How did it, how did it make you,
So how open source has helped, I think, as far as my trade goes, being a systems administrator, like I'm not an exceptional systems administrator. I'd say I'm pretty average system administrator. Like I know how to do systems administration and I love it and it's a great job. Career-wise, what's made me distinctive has been my open source contributions, and that's when I was looking for a new job. I was at my old job, and I was like, I've sort of outgrown the sysadmin role here. It's a very small company, and I was the senior sysadmin for about 3 years, and I was like, listen, I need to move on from this. So when I started looking, I was like, dear internet, is there a job that is as sysadmin doing open source stuff? And it turns out that job does exist, and I was hired for it at HP, and all of the systems administration we do is open source. So like all our Puppet configs and everything we do to configure servers is all out there in the open. So for me, getting that role was sort of the culmination of all the progress I've made in my career doing volunteer work. It was like finally saying like, here, you've done all this volunteer work, now we're going to pay you to do the same awesome things. Also, I really like writing, so having an opportunity to participate in writing a book was really exciting. So career-wise, that was really awesome. It was a book about Ubuntu, so it was all my volunteer work, pretty much. Didn't really have anything to do with my job, so that was exciting.
So, Anna, how did it help you on a personal and professional level? How did you get better, or?
I met a lot of people. I have been on conferences in US that I never thought would happen to me. I learned about other projects that other girls from EMEA are working on. It gave me some ideas what can be done here. And in the end, I think that we can do something to organize people here in Croatia, to make some changes, to share things. So looking what people can do when they are working on some projects and what open source can do, that's a great, it's positive thing and gives the strength to do something, because being a volunteer can be sometimes hard because people need to find a reason to be a volunteer and to do something in free time when they would rather sit and do nothing. So looking at the others can be motivating, and connecting with people can be motivating, and I think that also gives some other opportunities to meet people, to maybe to find a different career path and to develop as a person and as a developer.
Yeah, I would mostly say that it built my network, so I can really spread the word and say a lot about the stuff that I'm doing. And also this summer, during the Google Summer of Code, NOM is organizing GADA conference, so it's really, and also outreach program for women participants will join there. So I'm really looking forward to meeting those people and women that are doing the open source and the stuff. So I think this way it really, I don't know, it's building me personally, and I have a chance to work on the stuff that I like to do.
Well, this free and open source technology world has actually transformed me, because I used to be a shy person and I was feeling comfortable in the shadows, and this actually transformed me to be quite the opposite. I'm not afraid to stand up anymore, and I'm not afraid to accept bigger challenges just because they are difficult in the beginning, and that's basically it. And of course, I don't need to repeat everything what ladies here said, because it would be actually copy-paste. It happened similar to me as well.
So what are your suggestions for long-term solutions for women to apply for open source, to contribute to open source? And what do you think, what could inspire majority of women, not just women, but people in general, to join the open source cause? How to represent that problem, you know?
Yeah, that could be my answer could be connected with the education issue that we already discussed. So I wouldn't actually separate, okay, how to bring more women or how to bring more men, because I don't want to make a difference. So let's be honest. Free and open source technology world is still not as popular as proprietary world. And it's still not on that same level that we would like it to be, and that's why we are having these conferences, right? And not only here and abroad as well, so we could actually speak up, and so people could actually hear about us more, right? And you have heard that people are having a lot of problems with free and open source technology migrations on the national level. There is a lot of obstacles. There are years and years when people actually really migrate completely to free and open source technology. And considering how to resolve that issue, how to resolve the issue, that question you have asked, we should actually speak up more, right? We should bring this on a national level, because if you want to, because the main goal would be to inform and educate people. Why are so little women and actually men in this free and open source technology world, at least in my eyes? Because they're not informed enough, they're not educated enough, and we should actually change the education on a national level. Just one positive example I would say is, Dave can correct me if I'm wrong, but I had a chance to read that in UK, they got a chance in 2012, teachers of ICT, they can actually create curriculum based on free and open source technology if they want to. And that's one little step that could actually boost teachers that are already innovative in education, and that could actually move obstacles that today they still exist. The obstacle called that free and open source technology is still not omnipresent in education. You will mostly find Windows, at least in Croatia, Windows XP I don't even have to mention.
Torrented Windows.
Even if it's expired, shame. So this is how I would start. On the national level, because I would like that everybody is informed and that people know that they have a choice. So if they know that they have a choice, that there is not only one railroad, we could probably have more people in this world that we are actually promoting today and another 2 days, right?
So what's the situation like in America, Elizabeth?
So actually, it's very similar in the higher education. There's still a lot of Windows, a lot of Macs too, not a lot of open source. I talk to friends frequently who are in college, and they're like, I'd really like to install Linux, but I need this one application that only runs on Windows, or only runs on Windows and Mac. And it's pretty disappointing. It's sad that people who want to run the open source software can't. On the topic of getting more people contributing, I think we need to pay more people to do open source software. Yay. It's happening in the US at least. I'm paid to do open source software. Previously, I had a job to feed my open source habit, but now my whole job is open source, and that's really exciting for me. And I'm seeing that happen more and more. Like, we're hiring a lot of really hardcore open source people at HP. A lot of other big companies are stepping up and actually paying people to do open source. And I notice in the OpenStack community, where almost every single person working on OpenStack is paid by some company or another, the ratio of men to women is actually increasing. And I wouldn't say this is because women are just all after money and they won't do things for free, but statistically, women still tend to have they have less free time than men because they still handle typically more of the elderly and child care in their life. They may also manage a household or do other things that keep their time. I don't have any of these things because I don't have kids and I don't have a commute, and my husband works at Google, so he works more than me. But I'm atypical, and obviously I contribute to open source. So understanding that a lot of people, especially women and people of lower income, don't have as much free time as some of us who are really passionate about open source and do a lot on our free time, paying people is a huge incentive. So whether it's the GNOME Outreach Program for Women, which has a small stipend that is paid to interns, or it's encouraging more companies to invest in open source developers, I think that'll help change the ratio.
So are there any questions? I think we have 10 minutes left. We have a question.
So on My Society's active projects, one of the things you mentioned was the difficulty of getting in to start with. We mark simple issues as suitable for volunteers as a tag on a GitHub repo, in the hope that this will help people who want to solve a problem. And I just want to correct something, that it turns out our developers could easily solve it, but they're normally such simple problems that the developers don't. And they're often quite nice front-end little things that somebody starting can do. So we started using suitable for volunteers as a tag on our repos to try and help that problem. But there is a catch. The catch is that organizations who do that have to then make time to provide the mentoring. And we used Google Summer of Code we ran a couple of years ago, but we didn't do it the next year because actually it's a drain on your own developers to do it as well. And there's a really interesting balance. So if you have any suggestions of how you think, when you're saying more people should spend money on it, I agree with it, but where do you think that change can happen to get companies to understand they have to make time for that?
There's another problem with the simple tags, is you also have to maintain the list of simple tags, which is a huge problem for a lot of projects. A lot of projects will start using simple tags or byte size or whatever their terminology is, and then they won't maintain that list. So someone new will come along and they'll look at this small task, and it turns out it's actually a really complicated task, and they'll get discouraged because they say, I can't even solve this simple thing. How am I going to? So there's a lot of time that needs to be invested. I mean, how we typically pitch it to companies that I've worked with is that we need to invest in the future, and we appeal to the fact that they can't hire technologists who are up to speed. So we pretty much say, you know, you're having such a hard time hiring people in technology. One of the things we have to start investing in is mentorship, because it's proven that Google of Summer of Code students and GNOME Outreach Program for Women students actually are people who become hireable employees because they're being taught practical experience. So sort of talking about, you know, at least in the US, we have a problem finding experts. I mean, I think the whole world, I mean, technology is booming right now, and it's hard to find qualified candidates. So appealing to that part of the company is a start.
Well, I'd like to add here, is it possible, Dave, that other companies similar to yours that actually collaborate with you in order to get more mentors? Is that possible?
Yes. There's no lack of will, that's for sure.
Because maybe in the collaboration way, because free and open source technology is a global collaborative project, one big project, right? If I speak on a global level, then maybe companies should actually collaborate one with other, and we could have more mentors. I mean, I have noticed that on the outreach program for women at Linux kernel internship. Linux Foundation actually joined last year, and I have tried that. And they had a lot of mentors, not only from Linux Foundation, where Greg Hartman was one of the mentors. There were also mentors from Intel, like Sarah Sharp, and from other companies as well. So I would definitely recommend that more companies that have a similar work, that they should join some projects, so people from one company wouldn't be drained, as you mentioned. Any more questions from the audience we would like to answer?
Hello. I have a question about your ladies thing. How many times did you organize the event, and how many ladies did you get on that event?
So we had 3 workshops, Ruby, Python, and Android. It's a 2-day event, and we invite 50 ladies. And for that event, we need 10 mentors and a person that will lead the workshop. And it takes Friday afternoon and Saturday, usually. That's how it's organized. And what we want to do with that is not only teach them what to do in a 1.5 day, but also spread the word that that we are organizing workshops. And then what I found interesting is that we are slowly changing the mind of people that women can be developers and do things. So when they come home and show to their kids, then their kids will say, oh, my mommy did it, I can do it. So we are aiming to a wider population with the workshops.
What are your biggest problems in organizing more events? You already said the money.
Yeah, money.
Is that the only thing, or do you have some place where you can organize the event? Or?
We have a place in here, because this space is great for a workshop, and we get it for free. Thank you. And we have volunteers, because people are aware that we will need developers. Boys or girls, we need them. We need to promote IT, and we don't have enough people going to tech universities. So I think in 2020 we will have like 30% of developers that we will actually need. So that's why we are working on promoting IT.
Well, you mentioned that women got degraded during their study or work because they're women and they cannot be developers. So I have a question for my younger colleague. During your study, have you ever been degraded because you're a woman? Because maybe I live in the wrong planet or something, but I think that years that women were degraded because they're being developers or, I don't know, electrotechnicians are way behind us. Because FAIR is following steadily increasing number of women that are coming into college, and I don't see, how to say, that they are really degrading them. Actually, in most of cases, I see mentors encouraging them to do better and pay more attention to their time and their practicing than in men's case.
Yeah, I would like to comment this. I haven't actually experienced the grading at the university level, for example. Just once I got the comment like, oh, you're the only girl I know that is doing open source or something like that. That's, of course, not degrading. That's really nice. And but the problem is, I think that still in these, maybe we could say Balkan countries or something, that it comes from the family. Because I did found this at the high school. When I said that I'm going to study, I actually didn't want to say what I'm going to study until the last year of the university, although I was already thinking about it. The reason why was because I already knew what's going to happen, and this actually happened, that when I spoke up and when I said what I'm really interested in and what I want to study, and then a guy told to me, oh, what, are you really going to study that? How can you do that? You can't do it. So it was degrading. I was thinking for a night or two, is it really a way to go for me? But I thought, yeah, it's just some words, doesn't matter. So maybe it's on some lower level, like high school and stuff like that. University, I didn't find it really. And yeah, mentors are really helping us, so it's not a problem, I think, there.
Just something to add. I wish I lived in your world. Because, I mean, I found that a lot of the really overt sexism has gone, but there's still a lot of subtle sexism, maybe not directly saying, wow, you're a woman, you can't do that, even though that actually does still happen. But I'm fairly prominent in the Ubuntu community, and in my role as a woman and as a leader in the community, starting in Debian, a lot of Debian women got death threats over the internet. I got one. I've had people harass me over the phone, like they found my number and they were calling me all kinds of times. I've had people try to shame me by sharing my address in public, which I don't care about because my address is public. Everything about me is. But they were doing it intentionally to intimidate me, saying like, oh, everyone here's her address and phone number and all her personal data. So I've definitely encountered a lot of really, really bad stuff in tech because I'm a woman, and it's unfortunate, and but it definitely does still happen. And it's mostly anonymous and unprofessional. So when I work in OpenStack, pretty much everyone there is paid, and I've never had a problem with my gender there in that project. It happens mostly anonymously on the internet, where people are harassing and they think they can get away with it because they have these deep down feelings, and they're not going to say them to my face ever, but they're going to say them in a comment on my blog. So yeah, it still happens.
It does happen, and it will happen that you will be ignored just because you're female, and your opinion will be less valid just because you're female, and if a guy says that same opinion later on, he's the hero of the day. That happened to me, and that's really not, that's the subtle thing that actually Liz has mentioned, and it's really not nice, you know? And if you have pulled a great amount of work, and your colleague has pulled the lesser amount of work, he's the hero of the day. You won't be acknowledged enough, just because you're female. It will happen, not everywhere, but it will happen.
Here was another question.
I don't want to end on that sad note, so please ask a happy question.
Well, I wanted to build on this last part. So the challenges for women in tech in general, or IT in general, are they the same as challenges for women in FLOSS community? Would you say that FLOSS community is more hostile or more accepting of women than IT in general?
I can start here. It's more hostile, unfortunately, mostly because of anonymity and being online largely. You would think that since you don't have to use your real name, and I mean, most of us do because we want to be professionally successful, but you could just, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog. But in reality, it really is just more hostile because of the anonymity, and people aren't the people who may misbehave, they aren't bound by some sort of human resources department who will yell at them or fire them if they misbehave. So they sort of just do their own thing. I also find that companies and professionalism does a much better job of reining out bad seeds. So people who are intimidating or mean to their colleagues in a professional organization will be sort of sanctioned off by a manager, or they'll be fired, or you have to learn to collaborate and be nice to people. Whereas open source, anyone can contribute, so you get all sorts of people, and oftentimes the community will not step up and remove someone. If they're very technically competent but socially a mess, they may not be removed from that position. So.
And they should be removed because I had a chance to be at the OpenSUSE conference, and their community manager, who is actually now community manager at OwnCloud, has actually said that these people should be removed from free and open source communities because they're bad for others. They will actually make other people go away, and you will lose a lot of good contributors because of that. That's not good, because people are malicious. They think that they contribute just because they start flame wars on the internet, and that's really not good.
I just want to say Linus Torvalds is one example that's kind of, it's hard to fix things. Okay, he's not harassing women, but he's generally
harassing women.
Yeah.
Harassing people.
Well, at least he's honest, and I respect that.
Can you comment of the feedback you get from the specialized mailing lists like Linux Chicks, Eclectic Tech Carnival, Gender Changers, Feministic Hack Labs, and similar?
Can you actually repeat the question? Sorry.
Can you comment of the feedback you get from the specialized mailing lists and other resources like Linux Chicks, Eclectic Tech Carnival, Gender Changers, Feministic Hack Labs? And
Comments in what way?
positive, negative, gender-based.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I didn't join Linux Chicks, but Liz did.
So for me, some of those organizations are a bit, I don't know, too feminist for me, or they get a bit extreme. So in some cases, I don't feel hugely comfortable on them because, again, I love all my colleagues. Everyone is great. And I find sometimes they get a bit aggressive. But other ones, like Linux Chicks, I found to be super supportive. When I first got into Linux, I was the only woman I knew in my area who was into Linux. So being able to join their mailing list and their IRC channel, and again, that non-quantifiable, like, oh my gosh, there's women and people who look like me who are doing this. I think I joined the IRC channel, and the women in the channel were talking about brewing beer, which was exciting because I was growing hops in my backyard, and I love brewing beer, and I love beer. So meeting women that were into Linux and so into beer that they'd brew it themselves was like the best day of my life. So in some ways, like joining these organizations, you can find women who are like you. And another time, sometimes the threads get a little like, I don't really want to participate in that thread because it's not really reflecting of who I am and what I believe. But at the same time, a lot of them can be really supportive. So as a woman who's joined a lot of these sort of specialized lists and sort of gone around between them, I sort of pick out the ones that I feel most comfortable in and are sort of at my level of feminism. And then that varies for everyone based on their life experience or whatever they're aiming to do.
Any more questions?